My mother sent a message. We've discussed it. It's better if you keep your distance from the family. My brother responded with a thumbs up emoji. I shot back. All right, I'll stop the mortgage autopay tonight. By midnight, the family group chat was in chaos, filled with frantic messages and accusations. Sometimes I wonder how long they expected me to keep going along with it. Like I'd just keep signing checks and enduring their nonsense indefinitely. Truthfully, I might have, if they hadn't made it so simple to stop caring. It's strange how people push you away and then act stunned when you finally walk away. I wasn't always this detached. I didn't grow up imagining I'd cut ties with my parents and brother. I wanted to be the one to show them that family didn't have to mean control or shame. For a time, I believed I was doing that, mending something broken for years. But I was just the tape holding together a hollow version of family. It happened on a Wednesday. I remember because work was unusually calm, and I felt an odd sense of peace. I was halfway through my first real attempt at relaxing when my phone pinged. I saw the group chat alert and thought it might be another passive-aggressive article from mom about forgiveness or some not-so-subtle story about a wayward daughter. Instead, it was just one line. We've discussed it. It's better if you keep your distance from the family. No greeting, no apology, not even a soft lie to ease the sting. Just a blunt verdict, apparently decided by group vote. And to top it off, Josh's thumbs up. That hit harder than the message itself. Maybe because he was supposed to be the one who remembered what I'd done for them, who knew how often I'd saved them. He knew. They wanted space? Fine. I gave it to them. I replied, all right, I'll stop the mortgage autopay tonight. And I meant it. For the past year and a half, I'd been covering their mortgage. Not once did they say thank you. When Dad lost his job and Mom's health issues worsened, they started slipping behind. Josh couldn't pitch in. He's still living like a broke college kid, jumping from job to job, maxing out credit cards. So I stepped up quietly. They never asked, but they accepted it. It wasn't just money. I gave them stability, time, security. They lived as if nothing had changed while I silently propped up their world. But being useful doesn't shield you from being unwanted. That night, around 11:52 p.m., the chat blew up. Mom sent a flurry of texts, first confused, then guilt-tripping, finally spiraling into panic. Josh followed, flipping between defensive and desperate. Then Dad sent a long message accusing me of emotional manipulation, saying I was tearing the family apart over nothing. Over nothing. I didn't reply, not because I had nothing to say, but because I'd already said everything that mattered, not in words, but in actions. Years of showing up, fixing things, paying for things, being the one grown-up in a house full of people who never learned to stand on their own. They never saw how exhausted I was. Or maybe they saw and didn't care. The almost funny part is they still didn't get why I finally broke. They thought it was about the message, that I was overreacting, that I'd calm down and come back like always. But it wasn't the message. It was the final proof I didn't belong anymore. No matter what I gave, I'd never be more than the daughter they tolerated, the sister they ignored, the bank they relied on. And they didn't know yet that they hadn't just lost the money. They'd lost me. The next morning, I didn't check my phone right away. I knew what was waiting: panic, backtracking, probably some guilt trips. I'd seen it before, just never this raw. I let the coffee brew while I sat on the kitchen counter, staring out the window like it was any other day. But it wasn't. There was a strange calm inside me. Not grief, not even anger, just a quiet clarity that only comes when something finally shatters and you realize it's not your job to pick up the pieces anymore. When I finally opened my phone, it was exactly as I expected. 37 unread messages, 2 missed calls from Mom, 1 from Josh. They hadn't even waited for daylight to start rewriting the narrative. Mom's first texts were all, "Let's not overreact," then shifted to, "It didn't mean what you think." Then the classic, "You took it out of context." The old, "You're too sensitive" routine. I knew it well. Josh jumped in, claiming the thumbs up was sarcastic, that they'd just been venting, and I'd taken it too literally. His messages got more defensive with each one. "We were just talking. You blew it out of proportion." Right, because telling someone to stay away from the family is just casual chit-chat now. They were scrambling to backpedal, but it wasn't subtle. It was the kind of desperate spin people do when they realize they've cut off their own lifeline. They hoped I'd cave like always, panic, make peace, apologize for misreading them, and quietly resume my role as the family's safety net. They didn't understand one simple thing. When someone pushes you out and you take them at their word, the power shifts. The truth is, that message wasn't the start of the end. It was just the first time they'd said it out loud. The real break began weeks earlier, maybe longer. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. About a week before the text, Dad called, annoyed I hadn't sent an extra $300 for utilities. I told him I was tight that week. Rent was up, groceries were crazy, my car needed a new battery. He went silent, then said, "Well, a heads up would have been nice." Then he hung up. No thank you for the last 18 months. No concern for how I was managing. Just irritation that the cash flow paused. I should have seen it then, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt because that's what I always did, and they always took it. That day after the text, I did something I hadn't done in ages. I scrolled through every conversation from the past year. Texts, calls, everything. I wanted to check if I was being unfair. What I found made my stomach turn. Every single exchange was them asking for something or me offering help. Not once had they checked on me, asked about my life, my job, my mental health. Nothing. It wasn't a relationship. It was a transaction. I was useful until I wasn't. And now, when they realized they'd cut off their source of comfort, they were scrambling to undo it. Not because they missed me, but because they missed what I provided. So I didn't respond. I let the messages stack up. They were banking on guilt to reel me back in. But for the first time, I felt none. Not anymore. By Friday, I'd stopped checking their messages entirely. I muted the group chat, silenced calls, archived emails. They'd shifted from panic to bargaining, exactly as I expected. First, it was, "Let's talk." Then, "This has gone too far." And finally, "Don't throw away family over money." It was like watching a desperate PR team try to spin a scandal they never thought would go public. I didn't reply. I'd said all I needed with one sentence, and it clearly rattled them more than any argument could have. Still, I didn't expect them to show up. It was Saturday morning. I'd just gotten back from the store, juggling bags and keys, when I noticed a car parked across the street. I thought it was a neighbor's visitor at first. Then I saw Josh leaning against the hood, arms crossed, acting like he hadn't just endorsed my exile with a thumbs up. And there were my parents, sitting on my porch, looking far too relaxed, like they were here to fix a silly misunderstanding they'd graciously deigned to resolve. I almost laughed. I took my time unloading the car, didn't say a word, walked past them up the steps, unlocked my door, and went inside. I left the door open just long enough to make it clear they weren't welcome in. A few seconds later, a knock. I opened the door halfway, enough to see them, not enough to let them into their little performance. Mom started talking fast, like she always did when nervous. Said they'd been stressed, that things came out wrong, that I'd misread their intent. I stayed silent, just listening. Then Dad chimed in, saying they'd talked it over and didn't want this divide to grow, that they missed me, that family matters too much. I asked, without blinking, what had changed since Wednesday. They faltered. Then Dad said something I'll never forget. "We didn't think you'd actually follow through." That's when it all clicked. They didn't mean to cut me off. They meant to scare me. They thought I'd beg to come back, apologize for whatever imaginary wrong I'd done, and offer even more. They thought I was still the girl who'd do anything to keep the peace, even if it broke me. But when I canceled the auto pay and they realized I wasn't bluffing, they panicked. Not because they lost me, but because they lost their safety net. I didn't say much, just told them I needed space and that showing up unannounced wasn't helping. They didn't argue, probably because they were still trying to seem reasonable. Josh looked angry but stayed quiet. Before they left, Dad pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me without a word, muttering something about transparency. They walked away. I didn't open it until they were gone. Inside was a printed statement, a closure notice for an old joint savings account I'd forgotten about. My name was still on it, though I hadn't touched it in years. They'd drained it completely. Baker, that money was mine originally. I opened that account in college, and for a while, we used it as a shared emergency fund. I put in the most. Eventually, I stopped contributing, and it just sat there. I assumed they'd leave it alone. They closed it 2 days after that message, quietly, while pretending to want peace. It wasn't just emotional games anymore. It was deliberate. They weren't sorry, they were planning. They knew they'd burned the bridge, so they grabbed what they could before it collapsed. That's when I realized this wasn't a family disagreement. It was a calculated, drawn-out theft they'd been pulling for years. And when I stopped playing along, they panicked. not because they lost me, but because they lost access. They came to my house to fake a truce while they'd already taken the last shared resource I didn't even remember existed. I didn't cry or yell. I got a new lock the next day. Then I called a lawyer. She was a friend of a friend, someone I'd met once at a cookout and never thought I'd need. I wasn't angry. I was ready. She walked me through the steps. How to untangle my name from anything tied to them. How to secure my accounts. How to ensure they couldn't claim anything else. I was calm, focused. What I didn't expect was what she uncovered. My name wasn't just on that closed savings account. When I'd helped them refinance their mortgage 2 years ago, they'd used my credit to co-sign the loan. I vaguely recalled signing something, trying to help when they were behind and at risk of losing the house. They said it was temporary, just to make the paperwork look better. They never told me they didn't remove my name. So even after I stopped the autopay, I was still legally responsible. If they defaulted, my credit would take the hit, not theirs. I was so shocked I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly them. Even when they said they didn't need me, they were still leaning on the safety net I'd built. The lawyer outlined my options. They weren't great. I couldn't force them to refinance without their cooperation, but I could file a notice with the credit bureau to separate liability and flag the account for dispute. It wouldn't fully remove me, but it would make it harder for them to borrow against my name again. Then she said something that stuck. If they're willing to use access as a weapon, assume they'll escalate. She was right. A week later, I got a notice from a credit card company. Someone had tried to open a line of credit in my name. It was flagged because the address didn't match mine. It listed my parents' address. Not even subtle. I called Josh, not to argue, but to hear what excuse they'd try. He didn't pick up, so I left a voicemail. This is fraud. Try it again, and I'm pressing charges. Don't test me. 10 minutes later, he texted, "You've changed." I didn't reply. Yes, I had changed. For years, I'd been the fixer, the one who held it all together while they kept their hands out. And when I stopped, they didn't just distance me. They tried to take whatever else they could before the door shut. But they moved too fast, exposed themselves. Now I wasn't just defending myself. I was rebuilding without them in the plan. The next morning, I filed a fraud report, froze my credit, closed every old joint account I'd forgotten, switched banks, set up two-factor authentication on everything. And when it was done, I booked a weekend getaway. Just me, a cabin in the woods, no signal. I brought a book I hadn't touched in years, took a deep breath, and let the quiet surround me. For the first time, I understood real peace, not the tense silence of walking on eggshells, but the calm of no one taking from me anymore. When I returned, I expected silence. I thought they'd back off or go quiet, realizing I wasn't playing their game. But people like them don't handle being irrelevant well, especially when they lose control of the person they thought would always come back. It started subtly. My birthday passed. No texts, no calls, no fake thinking of you posts like mom used to share online. I didn't care. I smiled when I noticed. The silence was louder than any message they could have sent. It meant they finally got that I was serious. Or so I thought. Then came strange messages from distant relatives. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. A cousin from dad's side, who never liked me, suddenly wanted to check in. The wording was always similar. Just seeing how you're doing. Heard things got tense. Maybe it's time to let it go and move on. It didn't take long to see what was happening. My parents were sending family members as proxies, testing if I'd softened, if I was ready to be guilt back into place. They wanted to paint me as the one holding a grudge, not the one who'd been used. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I posted a vague line online. Healing doesn't need an audience. I didn't tag anyone, but it landed because 2 days later, mom sent an email. Not a text, not a call. An email, formal, like a business letter. She wrote about how she and dad had reflected and realized things had gotten out of hand. No real apology, just a hope that, in time, we can find our way back. She ended with, "Life's too short to lose family." No mention of the money, the credit card attempt, the mortgage, or the savings account. Just vague talk of hurt feelings and misunderstandings. But I knew what it was. They were scared, not of losing me as a daughter, but of what I might do next. Scared I'd go public, tell the family the truth, follow through and cut every tie they'd been pulling for years. They were right to be scared because I'd already started. That week, I met with a financial advisor my lawyer recommended. She was direct, the kind of blunt I needed. Your goal isn't just protection, she said. It's to rebuild so they can never touch you again. So we did. I closed the last shared tie, an old health insurance policy where I was still listed as an emergency contact. I updated my will, changed beneficiaries, set up a living trust. It felt strange, doing these grown-up things alone, like I was finally living my own life instead of fixing theirs. And here's what they didn't see coming. Without their weight, I was thriving. My savings grew. I slept better, ate better, had energy again. I started painting at night, not for anyone else, just for me. One day, an old friend who knew my family messaged me. You seem different, lighter, happier. What's changed? I didn't know how to answer because nothing had changed. I'd just stopped carrying what wasn't mine. It didn't end with a big fight. No dramatic showdown. No tearful call begging me to return. It ended quietly, the way it should. An envelope came through my mail slot on a Tuesday afternoon. It was from the mortgage company. They'd missed another payment, 2 in a row. The letter was stern. Words like final notice and serious delinquency. And there, in bold, was my name, still tied to the loan they swore they'd remove me from 2 years ago. That's when I knew they'd never stop trying to use me. Even after telling me to stay away, after draining a shared account, after the credit fraud attempt, they still thought I'd panic, step in, and fix their mess. They thought I was bluffing. So I did the last thing they expected. I followed through. I scanned the letter, sent it to my lawyer, and said, I'm done. Within a week, we filed a motion to force them to refinance in their names or sell the house. They fought it, of course. Mom sent another polished email about how we'd all made mistakes and could still fix this. No accountability, just panic dressed as reconciliation. Then the guilt machine revved up one last time. Old family friends started messaging. Your mom's struggling. You know how tough this has been. They might lose the house, Rachel. The house you grew up in. Yes, I knew. And for the first time, I didn't care. That house hadn't been home in years. Just a building filled with expectations I couldn't meet and burdens I didn't choose. They listed it within 2 months. It sold fast. I didn't ask for details or look at photos. I didn't feel anything when I heard the closing date. But they did. The day after the sale, I got one last email from Mom. No greeting, no punctuation, just, I hope you're satisfied. I read it once, deleted it, because I was satisfied. Not the loud, gloating kind, but the quiet kind that settles in after months of chaos. When you wake up and your shoulders don't hurt, and you're not checking your phone with dread. I was earning more now that I wasn't paying their bills. I had real savings, was traveling, sleeping through the night, painting, laughing more. My world was smaller but lighter. They didn't realize how good life could be when no one's dragging you down. And that, I think, is what drove them mad. Not the money or the house, but that I moved on without them. They thought they had the last word when they told me to stay away. They didn't. I did, by doing nothing, not reacting, not reaching out, letting them face the consequences of their choices. It wasn't revenge, it was freedom. And now, if they try again with more stories, tears, or guilt, I won't argue or explain. I'll just look at them like strangers, because they are. And that's not sad. It's peace. I thought it was over. I really did. Months passed without a word. After the house sold and that final email, I hope you're satisfied. I figured that was the end. I'd moved on, built new routines, started living without constantly checking for their next move. Just when it felt like a distant memory, they tried again. It started with a package, no return address, just my name in Mom's careful handwriting. I almost didn't open it, staring at it in my kitchen for 5 minutes, tempted to toss it and be done. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was the old family photo album, the green one with the cracked spine. It used to sit in the hallway closet, buried under old phone books and half-broken board games. Taped to the first page, next to a photo of me with a second-place science fair ribbon, was a yellow sticky note, like the ones Mom used for shopping lists. We thought you'd want this. You'll always be family, no matter what. No apology, no accountability, just nostalgia as a hook. I didn't flip through the pages. I closed the album, peeled off the note, crumpled it, and threw it away. I kept the album, not because I missed them, but because those memories were mine. They don't get to erase my past just because they decided I wasn't useful anymore. A few days later, Josh called. I didn't answer. A minute later, a text. Things are different now. Come see for yourself. I muted his number. No curiosity this time. Then came an email from Mom with a single photo of their new place. Small, beige walls, dim lighting, cheap rental furniture. The carpet screamed low-budget apartment complex. The caption, "We're settling in. It's not the same without you." I stared at it, not because it moved me, but to make sure it didn't. I kept waiting for guilt to creep in, for the old weight to return, but it didn't. They wanted me to miss them. That's what this was about. They couldn't stand that I wasn't suffering, that I hadn't crumbled without their approval, that I was thriving. They missed the old me, the one who'd see that photo and show up with groceries, hugs, and a check. The one who'd cry, apologize, take the blame. They missed the girl who thought love meant sacrifice. That girl was gone. I didn't reply. Instead, I filed a change of address notice, not because I was moving, but to ensure they couldn't send anything else. No packages, no letters, no reminders. Then I blocked their numbers for good. No more temporary muting, no more half-open doors for guilt to slip through. They made their choice when they sent that message. They underestimated the cost. And now they were learning what it meant to live without me. People say you can't choose your family. Maybe not. But you can choose who gets to be in your life, who gets to say your name, who gets to see the version of you that's finally free. And this version? She sleeps soundly, laughs often, doesn't justify herself. When silence follows chaos, she doesn't fill it. She lets it stay quiet. Because now, that silence isn't distance, it's peace.